Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tiff Talks Tech. I am excited because today I have Perpexo's CEO, Remen Okura. I'm really excited to have him here today because we're going to be talking APIs for dummies and making the most of your integrations. So before we dive in, could you share a little bit about your background and what you do?
Certainly. So as Tip said, my name is Revan Korwa. I'm co-founder and CEO of Perpexo. And what Perpexo does is we help technology vendors serving multifamily and single-family rental industry connect their technology products with property management software. And the way that we do that is through something we call a unified API. You can think of it like a universal translator, but instead of converting like Swiss and French into English, we convert RealPage and Entrada into a nice standardized language that these technology companies can interact with.
That's amazing. I'm excited to kind of dumb down the API so that it's something everybody can understand. Because I know, like, even when I was starting out, I'm like, I don't understand what this is. So let's kind of dive in a little bit. For somebody who's brand new, can you break down what an API actually stands for and what it does?
Totally. So the letters API stand for Application Programming Interface, but really it's just a fancy way of saying it's a way for two different software systems to talk to each other with a standardized language instead of definitions.
Yeah, for sure. And what kind of tasks can you do with that API to automate things in our
Yeah,
industry, at
so
least?
there are so many things that you see being done with APIs today. And I think a good example, let's take Yardi. Yardi offers a slew of different APIs that cover everything from their service requested work orders, ILS and guest card, the vendors and invoicing. And really for all of these different API bundles, each bundle is offering you the ability to do is both pull data out of Yardi, let's say, to sort of see what's happening and get insight on what's going on inside of your Yardi portal. But also, if you have vendors that you use, if there are other prop techs and vendors that you use to handle different workflows, let's say you love HappyCo's maintenance product. Well, by using these APIs, you can actually take work order data that exists inside of it and make sure that that's being appropriately reflected inside of Yardi or your other property management systems.
Yeah. And I think one thing I didn't even realize until I came to the vendor side was that a lot of these APIs, they do different iterations. So things can change and the information that is being pushed and pulled, that can kind of fluctuate a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. The one thing that's really compelling about APIs is that as a software product adds more features and capabilities, the APIs will tend to sort of grow with it because you can always continue to add and expose more data and more, let's say, product surface area using an API that other people can then take advantage of for automation.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some of those common terms that are associated with APIs that listeners should know about, like endpoints, requests? And can you explain that in pretty simple terms?
Sure. So two I want to focus on today are endpoints and methods. So in terms of endpoints, just think about this as specific data types or bundles of actions that are accessible via an API. So for example, I brought up Yardi earlier. Yardi has these service requests or work order endpoints, really just allowing you to interact with work order data that exists inside of Yardi. Similarly, Yardi has a bunch of what they call resident and tenant endpoints. And those are all means for you to interact with data about the people who are living inside the buildings. So frequently these endpoints are just going to correspond with the different kinds of data that you're interacting with all the time in the course of doing property management. Now, on the method side, if endpoints speak to a category of data, methods are what you can do with it. So for instance, you might see things like we have a get method, which is literally helping you get data out from the system. But then there are also what they call post and put methods. Both are just fancy ways of saying, hey, I want to push data back into the system. And those are what the methods stand for. Are you getting data out? Are you pushing data back the other way?
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. If somebody is wanting to use an API for their business, what are the first steps that they need to take to get that put together?
Yeah. So what I would say is first, get in touch with the various software providers that you work with and get you an understanding of what APIs they make available, and additionally, what other systems that they have pre-built integrations into. One of the things that is great about APIs is that because there's such a desire to have a large connected ecosystem, there are a lot of companies who've done a ton of heavy lifting on taking existing APIs and using that to build automations, and they have products that are built on top of existing APIs. So you don't have to start from square one. Really, there should be a lot of opportunities for you to take advantage of products that have already been built out. But if you want to go do some custom development on the side, that's also an additional option that you'll have.
Yeah, totally. I want to talk about making the most of those integrations. And this is maybe not a question I didn't prep you for, but I think you will be able to answer it. For somebody who is like trying to get an integration going, I know one of the common questions we ask is, does it integrate with XYZ? But I almost think we need to go a step further and ask in what way. So, what are the type of questions that you could ask a vendor partner to make sure that all your systems are talking to each other?
Really, really good question. And I will, like, this is one of those issues where I've seen time and again where technology buyers say they go in, they buy a tech that supposedly integrates, and
Right.
then they find out months later after deployment that while the integration might check the box on integration, but in terms of creating automation, saving people time, it completely drops the ball on that. So, what are questions that you can ask to avoid that kind of mishap? There's a few things. One, get comfortable asking your vendor to describe the integration. So don't
Hmm.
just say like, hey, do you integrate or not? Ask them instead, hey, tell me about the integration that you have. What data are you extracting from the PMS? What data are you pushing back into the PMS? How frequently is that data being pulled or pushed from one system to another? What are the specific fields you're taking advantage of with your integration? These are honestly like they're not particularly challenging questions, but any vendor worth their salt should be able to tell you with accuracy, hey, this is the data we use. This is the way our integration works. If you get hemming and hawing and someone saying like, oh, that's a really great question, I'll need to get back to you, that should be a bit of a yellow flag that, hey, like the integration that this company is promising might not be as baked or developed as they might be trying to sell you.
Yes, exactly. Like I know there's so many companies out there that, yeah, we integrate, but what information? So I think it's just really important that you're asking the right questions to make sure that, what you're paying for is what you're getting.
Yeah. And one thing I'll also add is there's a whole lot of ways to integrate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is another question I would encourage technology buyers to think through is, hey, tell me about the integration that you've built. Is it a part of the official integration program of any of these companies? Are you using technologies like RPA, or is it a reporting based integration? So while APIs are largely going to be the gold standard for getting high volumes of data moved back and forth, there are a lot of other ways that prop techs approach integrations that can definitely get the job done, but each approach is going to have its limitations and drawbacks. So you should have a good idea of like the underlying mechanics to have a better understanding of how that might actually impact the day-to-day experience once you start using the product.
Yeah, definitely. I also really want to help people have an understanding of some of the challenges that vendors face as well. I think that was something I didn't really understand when I was on the operator side. So what are some of those common challenges that vendors face when they're trying to get those integrations started and implemented, and how can teams overcome them?
Totally. So I think that one of the biggest things I've seen with vendors is that onboarding new buildings or a new customer can really be a time consuming process. I've seen for some of our customers, I've seen emails of like 3 to 4 weeks of back and forth before they ever receive the API credential they need to technically start the integration process. And then even when they receive the API credential, because oftentimes a property owner or property manager has customized their instance of the PMS. Then once they integrate in, there's additional customization required by the technology vendor to make sure that they're fetching the right data and that they're pushing the appropriate data back in the other direction. So the way I think that technology vendors can try to get around that is have a really well-defined written process that you're bringing into every onboarding. So companies that I've seen do this well, as soon as a contract is signed, they're going to they schedule an onboarding call with whoever is sort of like maybe the RD admin or the technical person who's going to configure the integration, but they're also scheduling onboarding calls with the people who are going to be using their product day in and day out. And each of these calls, it's like a scripted performance. There's a checklist of things that they're going to run through. They have they have like screenshots and video recordings that they can show to the other party to make sure that they fully understand what they need to do. And then after it's all said and done, they have materials that they're going to leave behind as a helpful guide once they're no longer present in the room and this person needs to continue getting value from them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that one thing I didn't realize is that a lot of these vendors they have to pay for the integration, and so sometimes it doesn't financially make sense if they don't have enough customers that need that specific integration. So, definitely use your voice and asking your vendors for integrations even if they don't that they don't have it because they need to hear that, and then on top of it the other partner needs to hear it as well, because I know that there's a lot of companies where they need at least 3 requests from so and so company in order to do the integration or however many it is. So that's just something I think to keep in mind.
Yeah, 100%. The industry has a bit of a chicken and egg problem where
Yeah.
frequently, in order to get access to a property management systems API, you need to already have mutual property management or property owner clients using that property management system. But those clients want you to have an integration before they allow you to work with them.
Yeah.
But to your point, I see time and again that a lot of vendors, they prioritize which integrations to build first based on where they're seeing the most demand
Yeah.
across the systems.
Yeah, so definitely use your voice, say what you need, and don't be afraid to say it for sure. For vendors who are looking to make the most of those integrations, what are some best practices you recommend to make sure that those workflows are working the way they need to?
Sure. So I think that the biggest thing that I advocate for vendors is like be realistic about what your integration goals are. If you're only ever going to connect to like one or two systems, then I think it's okay to effectively build your integrations as effectively like one-off integrations. But let's say you're trying to serve the broad spectrum of multifamily owners and managers. And you therefore know you're going to need to integrate into 4 or 5 different systems. Then from day one, you should be thinking about how can I create a sort of like integration standardization layer. So regardless of which system I'm plugging into, the integrations are largely going to work the same way across all the systems. Vendors who don't sort of take that integration standardization layer approach, what they typically find once they actually go out and build 4, 5, 6, 7 integrations is that all of these APIs, they look different, they have different definitions,
Yeah.
and they have really different ways that they operate. Because changes are being introduced all the time, things break, and
Yes.
they end up having to devote a large team of dedicated engineers who just babysit integrations. And that can be a huge drag if you're a vendor where integrations are something you effectively have to do to win the deal, but you're not necessarily going to get paid more for offering an integration. So everything you can do in your power to sort of making sure integrations work without a ton of additional effort from your team is going to put you in a much better position to deliver the value your customers care about, namely your actual core product.
Yes, definitely. I even remember being on the operator side doing our monthly reporting and looking at 2 sources that essentially should have the same information because they integrate, and then it's like duplicating leads on one. And that's how we would tell if the integration wasn't working properly. So, as a customer, make sure you're checking, and as a vendor, you also want to check so that you don't have a bunch of people freaking out that your integration isn't working.
Yeah, it's like I think that the data quality, the thing that I see the most complaints on from both sides is this data quality issue.
Yeah.
Like if the data is not being, it's one thing to make, let's say your property management system your source of truth, and you
Yeah.
want all data to flow into that. But what you also ideally want is to see that it's the two apps that are connected with each other are singing the same tune, and you
Yeah.
don't have wildly different wildly different data coming out of both sides.
Yeah, definitely. So, what role do APIs play in data management and analytics for multifamily properties?
Yeah, really good question. So there are a lot of purpose-built analytics software for the multifamily industry that takes advantage of the APIs to help generate really insightful reports and analysis. However, one of the things that I've generally seen is that when it comes to reporting and analytics, the API offers one view of the data, but frequently, because you're going to want to get like so much data from so many different places, oftentimes what you'll see companies do is take advantage of like data warehouses and data lakes, where rather than pulling data from the API, what they're instead going to do is maybe they're going to sort of do a clone or a backup of their entire database, dump that into that data warehouse, and then start building reports on the overall data, not just the data that the API is sending. Now, in terms of whether a API powered reporting tool versus sort of like a broader data reporting tool makes the most sense, that really is going to come down to the specific use case you have.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. I want to talk more about industry trends and kind of what's coming up as we continue to evolve and grow as a multifamily industry. How do you see the role of APIs changing, and are there any trends that you're aware of?
Yeah, so I think that probably the biggest trend is APIs aren't going away, and more companies are approaching launching as you need to launch as API first. If you rewind the clock back to like let's say in 2010s,
Yeah.
like in 2010, I don't think there was a single property management system that offered a public API for companies
Hmm.
to integrate with. You
Yeah.
fast forward to now, it's baseline expectation. If you're going to have a PMS, there needs to be an API that third-party vendors can connect with. Another trend that I'm seeing is a change in the type of APIs being offered.
Hmm.
So if you look at Yardi, historically they've offered a SOAP API, which is a bit of an older data format, most
Hmm.
popular in like the 90s or so. But recently they updated the Rent Cafe to the more modern REST format. And I think that you're likely going to see other API providers. So it's like Yardi, Mirai, and I think RealPage. So companies that have leaned in on like SOAP or older format APIs gradually start to modernize them. And that's
Hmm.
going to be a huge win because the tech vendors who have to integrate in love to work with REST. SOAP is a little bit more challenging for them. So I think
Hmm.
everyone's going to get better integrations and ideally like better workflows and automations as a result.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I know that's always a big pain point for people. So that would be amazing. For companies who are hesitant to make that investment in the integration, what would you say are the long term benefits and what they could be missing out on?
Yeah. So I think that the big thing about like leaning into integrations as a buyer is that it opens you up to taking advantage of really best in class software.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of tools that while the property management systems oftentimes are going to have a broad portfolio of products available for you to take advantage of, there are a lot of best in class tools that focus on doing just one thing extremely well. And you don't want to close yourself off from taking advantage of a best in class document fraud protection solution or a best in class maintenance and vendor management tool just because it isn't natively being offered by any property management software company. I think that like that's probably why I would really encourage people to not be afraid of integrated products, but really sort of go in with open eyes and make sure you're asking the right questions. You're talking with other customers to get a sense of what is the actual experience going to be like using this thing if I do indeed commit. But there are so many ways to improve operations and deliver real value throughout the property management lifecycle if you take advantage of a lot of these other tools.
Yeah, I know so many companies are afraid to be like the guinea pigs, but I think it doesn't hurt to have a few test properties and make sure the
Mhm.
integrations are working the way that you want them to, because you might find that your results are better.
Exactly. I think that approach to stage rollouts,
Yeah.
nothing is going to be perfect. I think that given all the ways that every property management company, every property is unique and special,
Yeah.
can't like there's always going to like don't I think expecting hiccups, it's part of the process.
Mhm.
But if you can sort of get a rollout under your belt, see the results delivered, that I think that those small successes can help you breed confidence that if we do a portfolio wide deployment, we have a good understanding of exactly what value the product's going to deliver long term.
Yeah, for sure. So, kind of wrapping up a little bit for listeners, like I said, if you're new to APIs and understanding integrations and they want to learn more, where do you recommend that they go and grab more information to learn?
Yeah, so on, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Perfexo blog. We talk a lot
Yeah.
about the different APIs and API programs, largely focused on property management software companies. So it's like we've done write-ups on Yardi, RealPage, and Entrata, as well as a host of other platforms in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to our blog, I think that there's a lot of great content online, and
Yeah.
this might come up a little cheeky, but my personal favorite thing is asking ChatGPT or
Me
Claude,
too.
just like,
Yeah.
hey, tell me about API. Pretend I know nothing about software. It's like
Yeah.
I found that a lot of these AI tools could do a really, really good job communicating some of these concepts really simply and really succinctly. So that
Yeah.
would be another place I would recommend. So instead of don't Google it anymore. Go ask your AI chatbot
Yeah, because I feel like
what
I'm always
APIs are.
scouring the internet to find a digestible way to understand something, and so, yeah, I do that all the time too.
Yeah.
Yeah, what advice do you give multifamily marketers and property managers on evaluating and choosing the right tools so that they align with their needs? I know we talked about this a little bit, but, is there anything else you would recommend?
Yeah, so I think probably the if you're running a process, and I would encourage you to run a process if you're looking for a new tool, doing your homework up front is going to be really, really important.
Yeah.
So for all the, let's say, leasing AI or leasing automation tools out there, their features are going to be like somewhat similar, but there's always going to be differences. And so I
Yeah.
think that having a good understanding of, hey, like for my marketing team, what are the particular workflows we're looking to automate? Where do we
Mhm.
want to see that impact? And creating a rubric up front that you can then evaluate multiple vendors against, that will help you see, like, hey, while all of these vendors are offering leasing automation, this one offers a chatbot that can help with unit that looks at unit availability and booking. It can actually sort of like reserve units. Whereas this one, it has a chat bot, but all it's doing is booking tours for a for a leasing rep. And I think that like just like a little bit of homework up front will ensure that everything's been looked at apples to apples, and you aren't necessarily getting drawn to the shiniest, flashiest, slickest looking application. You're going to find the one that actually is doing what you need it to do for your processes.
Yeah, actually, that gives me a really great plug because on my website, I actually have a template. If you're looking at it's for AI solutions in multifamily, it's something that I used when I was on the property management side to evaluate my different options. So, if you want that, you can download the template on my website. But definitely, I would do that for any technology that you are evaluating. Do your homework, look at multiples because yeah, things may be shiny and pretty, but that was always a yellow flag for me because I want to, like, evaluate the whole thing. Does it actually work or is it just pretty?
It's like I want a little grunt. It's like you wanna see a little hair in the demo. Like it can't look perfect. Like there have to
No.
be some flaws somewhere.
No, yeah, yeah. Where's the flaw? Is it in the integration? Are you hiding it? I'm gonna find it.
And I think that that's the thing. You do have to be a bit of a sleuth here because if you
Yeah.
just go off the sales material, you're going to believe that every product is perfect, it works perfectly, and no one has ever been disappointed with it. And
Yeah.
it's just not the case.
I know, yeah. I'm also susceptible to being sucked in by salespeople. So, there's the twofold. But the evaluation's gonna help you avoid that.
Exactly.
I'm pretty gullible at times. Yeah. So is there anything else that you'd like to share about the importance of integrations in multifamily and any final thoughts around APIs?
Yeah, I mean, probably as a closing thought, it sounds super technical, but I think that there's ways for non-technical stakeholders who just want to get value from different pieces of software in the
Yeah.
industry to get sort of brush up on on the terminology. And then
Mm.
as you are engaging with salespeople, as you're diligencing different tools, you can have a strong voice in the room. You can be asking smart questions without being a software engineer. Like this isn't nothing about this is magic. I'm not a software engineer, and I've been able to launch a business based on APIs. So I think that the key thing is learn some of the terminology, do your homework on what you need a product to do, and then you can start asking questions about the
Yeah.
capabilities of the APIs and integrations being offered.
Yeah, I think it takes you a step above. Does it integrate? Great. Like,
Yeah,
check the box. Yeah.
exactly.
Definitely. So, this is a question that I ask every single one of my guests, and it does not have to be related to this topic. But do you have a tech tool that you are loving right now in your life?
Yes. So right now, my favorite piece of tech is this tool called Clay. You can find it at clay.com.
Oh,
So what is Clay? Think about it as like a supercharged Excel spreadsheet where you have a bunch of different, just like Excel, you have a bunch of different functions. But with
yeah.
Clay, those functions can include integrations into CRM, into email and other products, as well as direct integrations into ChatGPT, OpenAI, Claude, and Anthropic models. And what that allows you to do are create these like really complicated data workflows where you can
Mm.
pull, let's say, pull data out of a CRM, use a AI tool to do research on a person that came out of the CRM, draft it and start drafting emails once again using AI,
Mm.
and then connect that to your email sending platform to start blasting these out. The reason I think this is super powerful is that to date, I think there's been a lot of separation between, hey, this is a tool that uses AI, and this is the other stuff in my stack. Clay and tools like it are starting to bridge that gap
Mm.
where you can take a tool that has no native AI capabilities and start merging it with AI in a way that makes sense, and is a one plus one equals three kind of moment.
That's amazing. I'll definitely have to look into that one. I feel like you could do a lot with that for sure. Sweet. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find you and connect with you and learn more about what you're doing?
You Easy way to reach out to me is on LinkedIn. Additionally, if you want to learn a little bit more about what I'm doing, you can always go to our website. That's Propexo, Propexo.com. And you can always sort of check us out there. That's also where you can find our blog if you want to learn more about APIs.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I think this has been really helpful, and I hope people get a lot from it as well. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Tiffany, for having me.